All right, so everyone, we are at our final speaker for today, Dr. Maryanne Wolf. So, in case you don't know, which I'm pretty sure you do, she's the author who made us rethink everything we thought about neuroscience of reading with her monumental work, Proust and the Squid. She's been a tireless advocate for evidence based instruction, a perspective that's absolutely vital as California continues to refine its approach to the science of reading and structured literacy for all of our students. She's the director of the Center of Dyslexia, Literacy, and Creative Futures at UCLA, and she's not only researching how the brain learns to read, but is working to ensure that every single child, especially those with learning differences, achieves reading proficiency. Her work directly informs the policy decisions that every classroom in the state. She recently published an article called Elbow Room: How the Reading Brain Informs the Teaching of Reading, and I'll drop that link into the chat for you in just a sec. But now I am thrilled to welcome our amazing colleague in this work, a champion for the dyslexic mind, and our ending keynote speaker, the one and only Dr. Maryanne Wolf. Hi, Maryanne.
Oh my goodness, Leslie, you make me so happy to begin. I begin with joy because I have a very serious topic. So I'm going to begin, but no, I'm going to begin with thanks. And that is
Oh,
to you, to Todd, to Maria, who I have to say, Maria, I love when you said you were once a lone wolf. Now we're all a wolf pack.
right?
That's, that's
100%. Yeah, getting it done.
slight joke for Maria, and of course Madeline and all the amazing people, the partners here, the people that came to talk. I mean, I know so many of you, Claude and Esther and Becky. I mean,
Mm,
there are too many people to thank, but I want to have a special thanks actually to Assemblywoman Rubio.
right?
I'm just so thrilled that we see
Mm.
policy and research and practice and advocacy all
And
coming
money.
together. Oh,
And
yes,
money.
and
Yeah,
funding. Thank you, Governor Newsom.
yeah,
He's my favorite dyslexic governor,
right? Yeah,
which
100%.
is so special. But I also want to make a thank you to Margaret Goldberg. Now, she didn't say this, but I could tell you, Margaret is part of a very it's not select, except it's self-selecting group that we call ourselves, thanks to Janine Heron and Margie Gillis, the Peaceniks. And it is a good way of me saying that what we are doing as people who believe in literacy and what I will call deep reading in a few minutes, we are after ultimately the potential of every child to become empathic, critical thinkers for the benefit of our democracy and society. So, Margaret, fellow peacenik, I thank you, and I thank the Reading Coalition, Reading League. You couldn't have two more wonderful recipients. And now that my thank yous are, they are not over, my thank yous are continuous. I want to actually begin, and Todd knows I always hate this moment when I have to share my slides, and we go to the first slide, and our fingers are always crossed, but there you have it. Now, they have a title that I gave Leslie, How the Reading Brain Expands the Science of Reading and Foundational Skills. But I decided, because some of you know, so many of my slides are in different categories, and I can't do the category on AI today, but I especially wanted to do a sampler of, 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 if you will, insights and concepts, perhaps because we're all teachers one way or another, of lessons, a sampler of lessons about what literacy is. So I'm going to be structuring my 45 minutes with you in a very amazing way. The first one will be literacy as a human right. Now, I've never done this before, but except at Plain Talk, I did a little bit of this, anybody who saw me. Literacy as a human right is something that we all believe in, everyone. But this is my first show and tell. Literacy and justice for all. I held this up at Plain Talk. I use it in my life, but as a metaphor for ultimately what we are doing, just as Kareem so beautifully had in his office. Frederick Douglass said it so well. To read is to, in order to be free, we read. We read and become free. And this is so important. And part of that is what our work at the Center for Dyslexia Diverse Learners, but also our work as a task force on literacy and dyslexia in the UC Collaborative for Neuroscience, Diversity, and Learning. I say all those words because I want to begin my talk by saying this is a talk about concepts. I think Leslie wanted to have bookends for Kareem Weaver and me. So he is really giving you steps action. I actually saw Kareem at IDA and we started talking and I said, I said this lofty goal and he looks at me, he says, we need content. And I thought, oh, Kareem, my talk is going to be content with you, but also concepts, because we need to always undergird all that we do with conceptual knowledge that is based on really, and Becky Sullivan said this earlier, rigorous research, peer review research. I actually have to admit publicly that I have begun to hate the word align because often align does not mean based on peer-reviewed work research. And my talk is going to be largely based on that kind of research. But it begins with the very important reality that we were never born to read. We can read because our brain has a design principle to connect its most important parts: language, cognition, perception, motor, and affect. And we'll come back to that as we move along. But my second, if you will, lesson is about expanding our notions of SOR. Here I bring my second my second t-shirt, which is from my mentor and teacher at the Harvard Reading Lab, where she always said to all of us, for whatever we were doing, where is the evidence? It is important for us when we talk about the science of reading, never to be so, if you will, restrictive in our understanding of science, to believe that it not only very rightly emphasizes phonics and phonology and phoneme awareness, but it also includes a rich history, neuroscience, education, psycholinguistics, Reed Lyon, Brett Miller, Peggy McCardle, all these people at NICHD have fostered extraordinary evidence for different forms of intervention. Now, although we all believe and know from our data how important phonics and phoneme awareness is, you hear even at the IDA major award from Charles Hume, we have an emphasis and always have on multiple language processes. So you're going to hear me talk about the expansion of the science of reading and not allowing people to say, oh, it's all about just phonics. Of course, that's foundational, but foundational from my standpoint of studying the reading brain's connection in early acquisition means the absolute addition and connection of phonics, phonology, etc., with orthographic principles, and we'll come to this semantic syntax and morphology. I'll come to that in just a few minutes. But I also wanted then talked about our national reading panel. Linnea Airy is a wonderful example. That was 25 years ago, 24 years ago. Since then, we have added inside that science of reading, we have added 20 years of more information about why language processes, syntax, semantics, morphology, etc., are so essential to be called foundational. Now, Sue Sears, who's part of that task force, and I will have modules at the end of this talk to give you in which we talk about all the resources that go into an expanded understanding of foundational skills. So that will be modules at the very end of my talk, and I will end at one no matter. I I lost a few minutes to that amazing set of award winners. They deserved it. So I give you those 4 minutes extra rightly because they are, and I will use Margaret, is this, they are cognizant of how important all these components in language are and how they change our understanding of fluency and comprehension. So we are going to be talking about a more expanded understanding of science and an expanded understanding of our foundational skills. Now, underlying all of this work, and Mary Gordon Timpany has always corrected me because I always talk about the reading brain circuit. She says, Maryanne, it's circuits. And absolutely, that is really what it is. When we talk about reading, are about connecting the underlying five major, there are more than that, but these are absolutely major circuits because we weren't meant to read and have nothing there. Many of you have heard me say this. We have no reading gene. We have no reading one thing. We have a set of circuits that's our job. We help the child connect them. But it's a plastic circuit, and we'll be using that circuit in different ways, and our methods are reflected in the circuit. The mediums, the talk I can't give you today, and you can hear me talk about it in other places, but the medium, digital mediums, AI, they are changing the use of the circuit, and we must be aware of that. But our job is to help connect those parts. And I use this, no, I always tell everybody what Reed Lyons said about my acronym POSSUM, but I use it as a way of talking, not about, as he calls it, the garbage eating, ugly marsupial, but as a way to remind us of the consistency, the need, and several of the speakers before me talked about this, the need for integration, connectivity, consistently every day. I remember in Kareem's one section, he had this daily and then weekly language. It's daily, it's every day. We are helping our children connect phonemes to all the stuff that is surrounding the word when we activate it. And let me go through this very quickly. Please don't exclude when you're teaching phonemes the letters. The more connectivity, the better. So the big P is for all these wonderful things, but never isolated. You always want to put though that phonology, those phonemes, the practice for awareness with letters. Now, I won't talk about writing, but I sure hope that you are thinking about writing and the conventions and the ways that writing enhances and augments our work on phoneme grapheme correspondence. Now, a big part of my work of late for the last 15 years has been on trying to change the word. I've been working on two words. Don't always talk about vocabulary. Talk about semantic development that is beyond 10 words or 20 words that you're doing a week. No, no, no. We're talking about a courtship with all that a word connects to. Now, I like to talk about the linguistic term polysemy as a part of what goes into understanding, especially our primer words. A large amount of our primer words are polysemous, have multiple meanings. I use Virginia Woolf. I can't help myself. I'm still partly an English major. She said this about a word. We pin them down to one meaning, their useful meaning, the meaning which makes us catch the train. And when words are pinned down, they fold their wings and die. I want to have you, the teachers, the educators, the policymakers, to have your own love of language being transferred to others. And the knowledge of how words work helps especially our bilingual, our multilingual, and as Julie Washington says, our bidialectal readers need to have this amazing sense of learning their own language and never being disenfranchised from the language they're reading. And this involves a lot more work on syntax than many of us are giving. I know you don't diagram. I know I love diagramming, but I also know that syntax is an essential aspect of fluency and comprehension. And it isn't all just about speed. It's about linking, putting these connected pieces of knowledge about the word so that when you read the word, not only do you decode it faster and more accurately, but with more comprehension. So all of this goes into both two forms of understanding the alphabetic principle that took our species 2,000 years to learn, and we give our children 2,000 days to acquire this Helen Keller-like epiphany that letters and sounds go together and words are made of sounds. This is something that is a concept that many of our children are not learning. Please understand that is a cognitive component that we have to help our children with. The other aspect of understanding is all that goes into applying the words in sentences, stories, and books. I can't be more worried about places that I just heard from a journalist in, I'll just say, a major Texas city. They want to get rid of books because they said the science of reading, we're doing the science of reading. I said, what? Please, I need to talk to you about how words work in sentences and decodables and in read alouds and in books that follow decodables. We cannot be so restrictive in our understanding of the science of reading because it's always science plus story. Now, my next my next t-shirt, my next two t-shirts were just given to me, this one in the mail. I don't know if you can read it, but it says changing the world, one phoneme and two morphemes at a time. Kareem said it this morning when he was talking about suffixes. Morphemes are the secret sauce of fluency because they give semantic information and they give orthographic information and syntactic. This was also one given to me both by Mount St. Joseph and a wonderful group in Hawaii. You see the morphemes in the different colors. These are giving us orthographic shortcuts to reading. And just as Kareem said about older readers, the same is true for first graders. You teach four morphemes, E-R, I-N-G, S-E-S, and you are really helping them move from 8 7-letter words to 2 parts of a word. So we really need to understand that this possum is actually a different way of understanding foundational skills. And when we look at our screeners, and I've been a consultant in various people. I love the work of Multitudes and how they are really trying to have this very responsive to our bilingual population, our multilingual population. I also loved the ways that Jason Yankman is going. I think I just applaud. I applaud California for helping us. And I'll give you some data just at the very end about how important it is to have this early information. It's not a diagnosis, it's information about these expanded foundational skills. Now, Becky rightly suggested that, that name, all of these help us teach, but that rapid automatized naming test, full disclosure, Martha Dinkler and I did that first test. It doesn't matter, but we understand that naming speed is the fluency with which language and perception, visual perception, are coming together. So this is a very important aspect of the connectivity of foundational skills, but it should not ever be taught. That is not the point. You teach possum, you don't teach ran. So thank you, Becky, for saying that. But the last thing I'm going to say about possum, very quickly, read, lion, listen here. It's not a marsupial, it's a Latin word that means to enable. And that's what I really want people to understand. Possum is helping us to really, if you will, recapitulate the reading brain's connectivity or need for connectivity in our instruction and intervention. It's also a very important, if you will, undergirding of fluency itself. what I love about the screeners, what I just think is so important to say, is that the screeners give us pre-information about the development of these or their lack of development. So they're very important for us to think about. And in fluency, I lost in the IDA definition. I lost the word fluency to speed. I will only say that speed is insufficient to convey to you fluency. Charlie Haynes, who spearheaded all this, more or less apologized to me because I think a lot of people understand speed and they don't understand fluency. He said more or less. I want you to understand fluency. That is the speed with which multiple components, all those SSUMs and PO, all of it coming together, and they all contribute to how fast a word is accurately decoded, but more importantly, understood. That element, that aspect of fluency is so important because it allows that child to get ever more automatic, which means they can become fluent, not just at the word level, sublexical, lexical, and, if you will, sentential level, but also in the understanding of what they read in sentences, paragraphs, stories, and books. Yesterday, my dear colleague and former PhD student, Tommy Katsir, head of the Safra Center for Neuroscience and Education in Haifa, came and gave us a talk about fluent feeling readers. And her newest data, I need you to know this, no one knows this, or unless you read her research, but it's just brand new, in which she's saying fluency is totally related to feeling. That the more fluent you are, the less reading anxiety, the more self-esteem, and the better relationship to peers and teachers. These are data I've never seen before. I'm so excited. And what she is showing us is the importance of fluency for comprehension, but for that it also enhances that emotional aspect. Now, the next part of, if you will, my lesson is to expand our understanding of comprehension. Open up the surface, open up the hood, open up the trunk, whatever metaphor you want to use. Make sure you understand that comprehension has multiple processes that are interactive, always interacting. So after we've got these expanded foundational skills, I want to actually help you elaborate your knowledge of comprehension very quickly. What we're always talking about, and there's beautiful new work by Wexler and others on background knowledge, we're taking the child's background knowledge and seeing in our work with them what background knowledge they need to amplify their own, but it's an analogical reasoning that happens between what we know and what the text tells us. So this is a very frontal, if you will, executive kind of a set of skills to make this analogy, and it's always building. One of the most important things that you and I can leave this summit with is our importance in establishing a next generation that is able to take the perspective on of others. Whether we use the term passing over or empathy or compassionate imagination, we're talking about the building block of empathy in that human brain that reading gives us. It may not be the only thing we need to be an empathic society, but reading helps us remember we're not the center of the universe, and others are not the enemy. Our polarized society needs more reading of what others say. And fiction is one of the most beautiful things in the world because, like Diaz said, it's the closest to telepathy we can come. Now, the other absolute major aspect that I want to suggest in our deep reading and our work with our children and the work in whatever intervention, whatever instruction we're having, make sure we have an expectation that our children can analyze, can think critically so that they get their own best thoughts. That's the reason why I wrote the book, Proust and the Squid. Proust said, the heart of reading is to go beyond the wisdom of the author to discover our own. We want reading to be like a discovery process in which they are analyzing, evaluating, the truth of what is read. It is not too soon in first grade, second grade, third grade to have our children learn that reading is seeking out the truth of something. And we want to be citizens. We want them to be citizens who can be critically analytic and empathic and not be susceptible as we are today, as they are today, to misinformation and disinformation. Go vote. California, go vote. So the sum of all this is the basis for what I would consider our expectations of our children's best thoughts. One of the finest things I've ever done is to create a tiny metaphor for comprehension called TLEX. If I have time, I'll show you an example of TLEX, but it's to get our children to know that we expect and know they have best thoughts and that reading is their sanctuary to get it. So if we put all these things together, we actually do have a broader, more comprehensive understanding of the science of reading and a very much broader understanding of how foundational skills and deep reading skills include much more and should be there. My colleague Sue Sears, we worked on TPE 7. I think it's a piece of teacher preparation, and I'll say that at the end, but I really want us to understand we are always continuously learning, and the reading brain has so much to teach us. And I know my dear colleague from Shanker Institute this morning, Esther Cotero Corral, you probably might even have mentioned, like Leslie, I've written a white paper for you in which I try to show that an expanded foundational skills and expanded deep reading gives an invitation to some of our teachers who were never trained in science or science of reading and who are experts in books and stories. We should never have allow them to feel disenfranchised or to think that they have wasted. Instead, they have a wonderful expertise. They need to expand for the science of reading. And of course, some of us need to expand our own understanding of foundational skills. But I think there's an invitation. And I hope some of you, thanks to Leslie, are going to read that paper in which I give, I think, an invitation to teachers who have never understood or wanted to have, or just simply didn't have any training in all of this. And we want to invite them to the fold, especially when we deal with our struggling readers who we absolutely need them to understand this expanded understanding of foundational skills and science of reading and understand how that helps them teach the heterogeneity of dyslexia. Now, because the IDA definition didn't use the word heterogeneity, I tried and tried and tried, but they do say, and rightly so, that there are multiple different causes that happen. And of course, some of our research has shown us that there's these major small subtypes like biphonology and fluency, indexed by Rand, but that there's this largest group that have multiple different kinds of areas of weakness. And that's where that screener can be of maximally helpful. And the screener can help guide what I call multi-component intervention. Now, multi-component intervention is our best effort. Now, this is all part of the science of reading that was funded for 10 years with Robin Morris and Maureen Love. So many people were involved in really trying to simulate what the reading brain does and have these multiple components and that have our intervention be able to address those multi-components. And then, this is tough, I want you to really think hard with me, that this information then gives us not only intervention and instructional emphases, but it gives us areas within those multi-component interventions to emphasize according to the individual's weaknesses and strengths. So these screeners give us not just areas of weakness, but areas of strength that we can use. And this is so wonderful that we're having these multiple, if you will, factorial models of reading. Jason Yankman has one in which he's really saying there's these different forms. But you see, all this gives us an opportunity like I think we've never had before to understand that when we have these screeners, we have a more expanded understanding of the areas of strength and weaknesses, especially the incorporation of all the language processes. That gives us a better chance to do our instruction that includes these and that can emphasize what we as teachers bring to bear. So here's where I think, here we have such incredible experts in SOR, and we have sometimes less used experts in books and even what they might call semantic meanings. I'm not, I don't want to really put words in anybody's mouth, but I think this view actually invites, again, people who have never studied the science of reading, invites them to add their expertise and for us to learn from each other on a bridge that actually is the simulation of the reading, if you will, the reading brain. So Reed Lyon made sure that we tested this out, and he had various groups of us to address the multiple components in our interventions and to test them against just a pure good phonology program. So every one of our programs was like in conjunction with those excellent phonics, phoneme awareness programs, but to add, if you will, the PO, the SSUM. And so we were trying very hard in this research. Jack Fletcher says it's been underread. Sometimes things that happen in these scientific journals just stay there. And so part of my work is to make sure that you have examples, and certainly examples from our group, but examples from others. Maureen Lover in Canada, uh, 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 Sun-Yuk Kim in California. These are wonderful people who are trying to understand whether we can reverse engineer the reading brain in our programs, teach connectivity among those components, build fluency, and work to connect it to deep reading. So I only have time for one example, and so I have to use my own. I apologize. You can look at Empower, you can look at Young-Suk Kim's work on multi-component processes in some of her work. But I just want you to understand what this is trying to do is to incorporate language. Now, several of the speakers were talking about consistency. Consistency. The same words are used in phonology, orthography, same words in polysemous, word webs, same words adding syntax, same words using morphemes, same words in sentences and stories. We use decodable stories, but we also link it to things that have the same concepts and the same, if you will, orthographic patterns in other books. Bookalicious is helping us. We even have an AI generator in our program to do that. But the whole point is it's consistent from the sublexical, lexical, and syntactical level. So Maureen and I and Young-Suk, oh, this is the one thing that I love. I have to share. You can have it. This is called TLEX, stands for Trithinkosaurus Lex, morpheme. But it teaches comprehensive strategies. Same old that all of you do for prediction. That's the think ahead. Same comprehension strategies for plot, setting, character, etc. That's the think back after you read. Most important, head, think for yourself. I want them all to think for themselves, to know that we have expectations of them. Now, I want to give you some evidence, only two pieces of evidence that will support all that you're doing in California. Oh my gosh, there's so many people have done so much work, but these different bills have really, we can give you research underlying it that will only buttress it. When you look at these multi-component interventions, the top two, and then you have the third gray line is just your pure phonics. Now the top two, remind yourself, the multi-component includes phonics and phoneme awareness, but it goes beyond to incorporate language processes consistently every single day and applies them to stories. Now, then the bottom line is just classroom, good classroom as usual. Then you see effect sizes averaging over 99. This is incredibly important to understand. We can do more. We can do better. We can do better. And you can do this in your own whatever program you're using, but you have to think carefully, being consistent. And Becky had some really important things to say about that. Finally, not finally, almost finally, I want to say some of our research absolutely supports the early screening that is so essential. And what you see is how our programs, these multi-component programs, all have better effects if you begin them in first and second grade. We can still make progress in third and fourth grade. And for heaven's sakes, in our own new work on RAVO, we are extending it all the way because so many of the kids are having issues that we have to address. We cannot just stop. So I have to support the screeners so much by saying this information gives us so much more, if you will, grist to grind in our instruction when we have these good screeners right away and can go after it in first and second grade. Now, I'm going to give you lesson 5. I'm going to give you my resources. Everybody take a quick view of this slide. This will give you different interventions examples. And now, very, very importantly, my biggest gift, Sue Sears and I, and the task force from CSU and UC and CSU, we have 6 modules. We've worked 2.5 years on this, and they're available to you on Araya. What I want you to have right now is a QR code. All this is free. We are so excited, and Leslie's going to give you the Shanker, the white paper. So I end with this. I know, Leslie, I did it. I did it by the time limit. But I want you to say this. Children are our living messages. They are ours that we are sending to a time we will not see, but we will make better by being reading warriors and deep reading guards. And I'll finally end with Marilynne Robinson, my favorite novelist. The greatest test ever made of human wisdom and decency might very well come to this age. We must teach and learn broadly and seriously. Thank you, California Reading Summit partners. And thank you, Leslie.
Thank you, Maryanne. You just are such a delight to listen to. You guys, Maryanne was a guest on a podcast that we host at LACO. It's called Leading Literacy. And
That's
the
right.
best part of this episode with Maryanne is that she is a talker with her hands, as you've noticed through this presentation. And so when you listen to the podcast, you can't see her, but you can hear her going and slamming her hands on the desk all the time. It's hilarious.
Honey,
But
I,
it's one of
I
our favorite
forgot that.
episodes because you're so passionate and you're just such a
Uh,
lovely way to end our day
we
today.
all are.
Thank
We
you so
all
much.
are.
So, thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for all the work that you have done and that you continue to do, Maryanne, for educators in the field. We so appreciate it. And we appreciate that you would be willing to spend your time with us today and be here. I saw you online the whole day. So, thank you so much for taking that time. And
I wanted to hear everyone. It was so powerful.
I know. What a wonderful day, right? So that was our final speaker for today. So don't forget to sign up for the Reading League California. We want to build an army of literacy leaders across California, like Maryanne was talking about. These warriors. We need warriors across California. And we've got, I think, 75 people who signed up already through our through the day today. So please, if you haven't done so, sign up. We are running a little $5 off sustaining membership right now through the end of the month. So please do that. We really value partnerships. And I think that you've seen today the policy members, the advocacy groups, the teachers, the county offices of ed, the community partners, folks like Families in Schools and Glean and CORE, and all of these partners who help us do this work. And Reading League strives to be one of those. So thank you so much. And I want to thank Todd for being such an incredible partner in this reading summit. We are thrilled to partner with him and hope to do so for many years to come. He always hates recognition, but I'm saying it anyway because I have the floor and I can. So thank you, Todd. He's the little wizard behind the screen. Want to thank all our speakers and panelists, especially Kareem and Maryanne for doing the keynotes today, and all of our amazing panelists and practitioners who are out there doing the good work, and all of you who took time today to come and spend part of your day here. We have a lot of work to do, but there's a lot of amazing energy and momentum for creating this positive change in California. So keep up that amazing work that you are all doing. And thank you. And on behalf of the Reading League California and the California Reading Coalition, have a fabulous day, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.